Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. On today's show, I want to discuss the fact that the Doctor Who revival has been going for nearly 17 years, or around 17 years. At that time, we've only had two companions, Billy Piper's Rose Tyler and Jenna Coleman's Clara Oswald, actually crossed from one Doctor to the other. And I want to talk about the different ways that Russell T Davies dealt with this and Stephen Moffat dealt with this. Two really different ways. I love both ways, but it's very interesting because where Russell T Davies was always self-conscious about, you know, the ratings and keeping it a successful award-winning show, which the RTD era was, and, you know, so he took David Tennant's Doctor and he wanted to make him relatable and accepted by Rose's companion immediately. So literally, Rose does have doubts of the Doctor in the Children in Need special and the Christmas Invasion, but then David's Doctor leaps out the TARDIS, fights the Sycorax, kind of, in a way, romances Rose, and Rose is falling in love with the Doctor all over again. It's quick. Because as I say, Russell T Davies was very self-conscious that, you know, Christopher Eccleston was this amazing Hollywoody type of Doctor, great screen presence, around 6 foot, you know, he was very shouty, he could be very aggressive, but, you know, he had a heart of gold. He was that type of Doctor. Still my favourite Doctor of the revival, if you ask me. No one has done it better than Christopher Eccleston. Unfortunately, Chris fell out with the producers, Russell, Julie, and Phil, and that's a shame. And I've always said this, by the way, I don't put fault on either side about this because, you know, Russell, Phil and Julie have got this brand new, expensive, you know, revival of Doctor Who, and it's going to be the BBC's tentpole show, and it has to be successful. And, you know, no one's done this before, you know, in terms of a British show, a Janier show, you know, with all this money, CGI, you know, it was a very hard thing to pull off, but pull it off, indeed they did. And obviously there was issues where maybe the cast and crew were being overworked, and, you know, Eccleston didn't like this, and he was defending, you know, his colleagues. And as I say, obviously Eccleston's in the right here defending his colleagues, but obviously the producers are under a lot of pressure, so it's just a shame. And I just wish that they could all forgive each other so Chris could return for the anniversary. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. So Russell had this idea where, you know, very self-conscious about the ratings. We need to keep this a successful show. So let's relate David's Doctor quickly to the audience and have Rose accept him almost immediately after the Christmas Invasion. Because if Rose doesn't accept him and she's struggling throughout the season with this new regeneration, we're not going to relate to him either. So it's done really quickly. It's as good as season one. It's consistent. It works. And unlike Moffat, the new Doctor doesn't have, a brand new TARDIS desktop or anything like that. It's the same TARDIS. It's the same show with brand new episodes, and they're expanding the character and they're evolving the character going forward. And it's very, very exciting, and it worked. Now, Stephen Moffat wasn't really one to be self-conscious about the show's image or ratings. All he cared about was telling visionary stories. And Stephen Moffat is a very visionary storyteller. Now, so is Russell T Davies. And don't get it twisted. RTD really had some multi-layered arcs for his characters and made huge commentary, but he always made sure the show was the right fit for children and families. And it worked. And this is why, in a way, the Moffat era did kind of dive slightly in the ratings, because Moffat was all about telling any story he goddamn choose to tell. So when we first meet Clara, it's Matt Smith who's our Doctor, and she becomes this mystery box. A lot of people didn't like that. I thought it was really cool and exciting, and I loved the explanation for the mystery behind Clara. But Matt Smith's Doctor is really well mannered. He's very respectful of Clara. But what you see from Peter Capaldi is he's the complete opposite. He's rude, he's gruff, he puts Clara down constantly, and at times she's constantly slapping him. She doesn't like this version of the Doctor, But here's the thing. Peter Capaldi is the Doctor in his purest form. That's not me saying he's the greatest Doctor ever, or, making some big claim saying he's the real Doctor, but he is literally the Bill Hartnell Doctor. He's the Doctor in his purest form, where Matt Smith's Doctor was trying to charm Clara and impress Clara. Well, this version of the Doctor in his purest form, doesn't give a shit about impressing this woman anymore. He's bitter, twisted, angry, and he isn't taking any shit anymore. So he's a very interesting take on the Doctor. And what happens is, Clara resents the Doctor for showing his true face to her. She preferred the illusion. It's as Vastra said to her, I think, in Deep Breath, which is an excellent episode, by the way. I think it's my favourite Capaldi episode. The other version of the Doctor was charming you and being something he wasn't. This is the Doctor. And as I say, the Doctor in his purest form. So Clara, slowly but surely, ends up growing to hate the Doctor in his purest form. So it's a very, very interesting season 8. And the deeper we get into it, the more she despises him. She's working at the school. She makes, she falls in love with Danny Pink, and Danny Pink's a great character. And Danny doesn't like the Doctor either. I mean, this is the only version of the Doctor he's ever met. Until we get to the final episode where Danny dies and Clara tries to extort the Doctor into helping her. Now, the Doctor's fully in control of this situation. Clara, for the first time in this relationship with Capaldi's Doctor, hasn't got the moral high ground. It's the Doctor who has the moral high ground. And he says, do you think so little of our friendship? You don't think I would help you? And she's shocked by this because they've been kind of adversaries for the whole of the season. And then she realizes at that moment, this is the same Doctor. He is that Matt Smith Doctor, but he was showing a more uglier face, and not in terms of appearance, but he wasn't pretending anymore. And she couldn't really see the Doctor that, if you like, fell in love with. But at that moment, she realizes this was the same man all along. And he's been testing her. Did she genuinely like this person? Or was she just there because, she just saw Matt Smith's face in a way? And so, in the end, this version of the Doctor and Clara become, they have this close-knit bond, and it's a beautiful relationship. So, both takes are very valid in terms of Rose getting used to the 10th Doctor and Clara getting used to the 12th Doctor. Which one do I prefer? Now, obviously, the David Tennant, Billy Piper kind of chemistry, the Tumblr chemistry, it was a will they, won't they? Everyone wanted them they were in love, they were falling in love. It was a great love affair, which started with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, of course. But it's an interesting one because were Clara and 11 falling in love? And, when you get to Peter Capaldi, he's obviously an older gentleman. I think he was around 55 when he was playing the Doctor. So there's a lot of issues with having them being in love. So I think we're saying kind of they became friends. They decided to be friends in the end. And maybe there was a hint of love there, but, or romance there. But when she gets to know Peter's Doctor, it's like they're deciding, let's just be friends, man. Let's stop all the kind of sexual tension stuff. It's very interesting. Now, personally, I like deeper takes at character dynamics, and I love what happens between Clara and 12 because, as I say, they're adversaries for most of season 8, and it's really deep, dark, and compelling. And that moment when she chucks the TARDIS key in the pit of acid or whatever it is, right, or the lava or whatever, right, that's so dark. Because all she cares about is getting Danny Pink back. And at that moment, I think she despises the Doctor. She really does. And it's only when he says, do you think so little of me, you don't think I would help you? And every time I see that scene, I just break down in tears because it's so amazing. So, I mean, I like the dynamic between 10 and Rose and 9 and Rose. It's great. And it's a great romantic love story because at the end of the day, Russell is a very romantic type of guy. He's a very pure type of guy. Now, I'm sure Stephen Moffat's a lovely man, but his storytelling is more fairy tale, but also it can get really dark. And that dynamic between Clara and 12 was so dark, and I did get a lot out of it. Ultimately, I like both takes, but I do appreciate what Stephen did here, that he took the time. And he took big gambles in this. And I'm sure some people walked away from the show because of it. But still, he didn't care about that. Moffat was all about his takes. And I can prove this to you by showing, well, not showing you, but briefly talking about Heaven Sent and Hell Bent. If this guy ever cared about what we thought, you know, or we ever thought he cared, then we got, like, Heaven Sent, which is one of the best episodes in TV history, in Doctor Who history. Then we go to Hell Bent, which is so, I wouldn't even say it's a bad episode. It's just, it undermines everything that he set up so beautifully because he couldn't bear the fact of allowing Clara to die. And so, you know, but Moffat does what he wants to do, and he doesn't think about, you know, keeping everyone happy or keeping the ratings up. He just tells the story he wants to make. But this is why RTD is back now, because they desperately need someone who's a genius, who can tell great character stories and make Doctor Who as good as it can be for families and children, and so it can be the show it was back in 2005. I mean, in terms of revivals, I mean, I can't think of any revival as successful as Russell T Davies' Doctor Who revival. It's fucking genius, and they really did think deeply about what they were doing, because everyone who works on Doctor Who are Doctor Who fans at the end of the day, and I think that really matters. You do need a knowledge of Doctor Who, some kind of love or knowledge of Doctor Who to work on it. I really do believe that. And, you know, it's just a great success, and I'm proud of it. And re-watching Doctor Who right now, I'm so excited. It's like I'm watching it with fresh eyes. It's so brilliant. So let's carry on with the rewatch, because now we're going to talk about the Unquiet Dead. We've already spoken about Rose and the end of the world, and now we're going to talk about the Unquiet Dead. This was Mark Gatiss's first written episode of Doctor Who, and I still say very confidently it's his best. I mean, it's not that I hate his other stories, because he's a really good writer. I think this story is so good that, you know, the other stories seem lesser when they're not. And this is a story of kind of Victorian London. It's Christmas time. We meet Charles Dickens, and what a great version of Dickens we get here. He's so good. He's like, I would say, a standout character, but unfortunately for him, Gwyneth is the standout character in this story. And she's so good. She's this innocent young maid, if you like, working in a funeral parlour, and she's got the sight. She's kind of psychic, and, you know, ultimately she sacrifices herself. You know, she wants to help the Gelf, but obviously the Gelf don't care about Gwyneth, and they're using her. And, this shows you what a multi-layered character the Doctor is. Like, Eccleston's Doctor is being utterly selfish here. He's feeling bad about, causing so many problems around the universe because of the Time War. So he's feeling guilty for the Gelf, right, and what they've said. But, he's pushing Gwyneth here to do something, and she's happy to do it. But ultimately he says to her, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But she decides to do it. And Rose is all like, you can't allow them to use the dead bodies. It's wrong. And her and the Doctor start clashing. Who's right and who's wrong here? I don't think either of them are right or wrong. But it just shows you what a flawed character and how selfish the Doctor can be at times. It's like when Rose is being pulled to stay with her mum Jackie, and, Rose is going after World War III, Mum wants to know if you'll eat shepherd's pie, and he goes, I don't do domestics. And then he can tell that she maybe thinks she's thinking of maybe staying with her mum and Mickey, and he's going, this is happening right now in space, and he's literally manipulating her to come with him because he wants her with him. So this version of the Doctor, Eccleston's version of the Doctor, is a bit selfish and very, very flawed. And I think the best characters are always the flawed characters. You see, this is the problem I have with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. and this is not on Jodie, but she's a very flawless doctor. And that's not very interesting, unfortunately, and that's why her doctor doesn't work as much for me. I don't hate her doctor, I don't hate Jodie, it's not about that. I'm just saying I would have rather always have a consistently flawed doctor. And I feel that Chris here didn't want a woman to be a flawed doctor. And that's a shame, because women, men, and so many people identifying in different ways can have different character traits. And that's always important to execute that in the right way. And so, yeah, so the doctor is being really selfish in this, in this episode, Young, Quiet, Dead. And as I say, Gwyneth is the standout character. I always wanted the Doctor to travel with Gwyneth. I'd love to see the Doctor go prior to when she dies and travel with her or like share an adventure with her in an episode. And it's just crazy that Gwen from Torchwood is actually an ancestor, has this connection with Gwyneth as well, which is great. It's so exciting, and it's typical Russell, isn't it? That he didn't just shove that actress in Torchwood. There is a connection there. And who knows, now he's back, we may revisit that connection. So yeah, The Unquiet Dead is definitely, for me, Mark Gatiss' best episode. This is only episode 3 of a brand new Doctor Who revival, and already the show is showing what different places it can go to narratively as well, and it's absolutely fantastic. This has been Movies TV Mad with Tuesday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. Please comment, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And don't forget, I am Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.